Teegan, could me and you get a picture together?
For what? It annoys me that he's asking to take a picture, given that he never has before, because that's like a couple thing, and I know that's probably how he means it. You know, to open a can of worms of being friends, which I don't think would have happened if I didn't go. As of right now, I guess you could say I've sort of friend-zoned him for the time being.
Ethan Plath walked into Montana, acting like a man who wanted a second chance. But Teegan watched him like a woman who had already seen what his second chances cost. And that is why this storyline is not really about a vacation, a picture, or one awkward conversation in the mountains. This is about a man trying to repair his image in someone's heart after the damage has already been done. Ethan is showing up now. He is saying more now. He is trying harder now. But Teegan's reaction makes one thing very clear. Effort does not automatically become trust just because it arrives with a sad face and a pretty mountain view behind it. That is the uncomfortable part of this episode. Ethan wants Teegan to look at his effort and see growth. Teegan is looking at the same effort and asking, is this growth? Or is this just what Ethan does when he feels someone slipping away? And that is a very different question. Because if you have watched Ethan over the years, this is not the first time his emotional timing has become part of the problem. With Olivia, we saw communication break down over and over. We saw Ethan go quiet when direct emotional conversations became too heavy. We saw him struggle to explain what he felt until the relationship was already falling apart. Now, with Teegan, the situation is different, but the warning sign feels familiar. Ethan seems sincere, but he also seems late. That is the line this whole story is walking. Is Ethan finally changing? Or is he just finally scared? Because there is a big difference between a man who has done the work and a man who has realized he might lose the person he wanted to keep. And Teegan seems to understand that difference better than anyone in the room. So today we are not doing a basic recap of Montana. We are going to break down what Ethan's behavior really shows, why Teegan's reaction is not as cold as some viewers think, why the picture moment mattered more than it looked like, why fans are divided, and why this whole relationship may depend on whether Ethan can do one thing he has struggled with for years: stay consistent after the emotional pressure is gone. Because Montana did not prove Ethan changed. Montana proved Teegan still needs proof. Let's get into it. The first thing we have to talk about is Ethan's timing. Because timing is everything in this storyline. Ethan is not showing up to Teegan as a brand new man with a clean record. He is showing up as someone who already hurt her, already disappointed her, and already gave her reasons to question whether his words match his behavior. So when he suddenly becomes more expressive, more emotional, and more intentional, Teegan is not just hearing what he says in the moment. She is comparing it to everything that came before. That is why the Montana trip feels so tense. On the surface, the setting is beautiful. The family is together. There are mountains, views, outdoor activities, and the kind of peaceful scenery reality TV loves to use right before dropping emotional chaos into the middle of it. But underneath that scenery, Ethan is clearly trying to create a shift. He wants to reconnect with Teegan. He wants her to see him making effort. He wants her to believe that this version of him is not temporary. The problem is, Teegan does not fully believe the performance yet. And I do not mean performance as in fake. I mean performance as in visible behavior. The sweet gestures, the emotional statements, the carefully softer version of Ethan. She is watching all of that and asking whether it will still exist when the trip is over, when the cameras are gone, when the family is not around, and when there is no dramatic setting pushing him to be vulnerable. That is why the picture moment is so revealing. Ethan asking for a picture with Teegan might seem like nothing, a small moment, a vacation thing, a harmless request. But Teegan immediately reads it as something more romantic than casual. She sees it as a couple gesture, and her reaction tells us that she does not want Ethan reaching for the symbols of a relationship before he has rebuilt the foundation of one. That is the point. A photo can look innocent, but in this situation, it is not just a photo. It is Ethan trying to create closeness. It is him trying to step back into a space that Teegan has not fully reopened. And Teegan feels that. She knows the difference between genuine repair and someone trying to act like things are warmer than they actually are. Then she gives the line that explains everything. She says Ethan used to say or do things just to get by. That is a heavy accusation, because it is not about one mistake. It is about a pattern. She is saying Ethan had a habit of doing just enough to get through the moment, just enough to avoid a bigger conflict, just enough to make things feel okay without actually changing what was wrong. And once someone sees that pattern in a relationship, every future gesture gets questioned. So when Ethan asks for a picture, Teegan is not thinking, "What a sweet moment." She is thinking, "Is this real? Or is this another shortcut?" That is the emotional problem Ethan has to solve. And honestly, that problem is bigger than I think he realizes. Because Ethan seems to believe that showing effort should move the relationship forward. He moved closer. He showed up. He expressed regret. He admitted faults. He said he wanted to love Teegan the way she deserved. Those are all meaningful steps. But for Teegan, those steps do not automatically erase the old version of Ethan. They only open the evaluation process. That is the part a lot of people miss. When trust is damaged, the apology is not the ending. It is the starting line. And Ethan seems to be standing at the starting line, hoping Teegan will treat him like he already finished the race. That is not how repair works. Now, let's talk about Ethan without turning him into a villain, because that would be too easy, and also too lazy. I do not think Ethan is pretending to care. I do not think he is sitting there coldly calculating how to manipulate Teegan back into a relationship. That is not the energy I get from him. Ethan reads more like someone who feels deeply, but processes slowly. He seems like someone who often understands the emotional cost of his behavior, after the other person has already been carrying that cost for too long. That is the tragedy of Ethan as a relationship partner. His feelings may be real, but his timing keeps failing him. We saw shades of this with Olivia. Their marriage did not fall apart because of one single argument. It was years of communication problems, emotional distance, family pressure, unresolved resentment, and Ethan struggling to engage directly when things got painful. By the time he could fully express regret or emotional need, Olivia had already done a lot of her grieving inside the relationship. And that matters here, because Teegan is not entering this storyline in a vacuum. Viewers remember Ethan's past. The family remembers Ethan's past. And most importantly, Teegan seems to have her own direct experience with Ethan's inconsistency. So when he shows up emotionally in Montana, the audience can see it two ways. One version says, Ethan is finally growing. He is trying to communicate. He is trying to take accountability. He is trying to do better after a divorce and a difficult emotional period. The other version says, Ethan is repeating the same delayed pattern. He gets quiet when things are hard, then becomes intense when someone starts pulling away. Both interpretations can exist at the same time. That is what makes this storyline interesting. Ethan can be sincere and still be unreliable. He can care deeply and still make someone feel unsafe with his inconsistency. He can be trying now and still be responsible for not trying enough before. That is the grown-up read, and it is less satisfying than picking a team, which is unfortunate because the internet survives on picking teams, like it is a competitive sport with no prize money. Now, Teegan's side is also complicated. After Montana, she says the trip did more good than harm. That is not a small detail. If she were completely done, she could have easily said the trip made things worse, or confirmed that there was nothing left. But she does not say that. She says it opened a complicated door of friendship. And then, she basically says Ethan is in the friend zone for now. That phrase is brutal, because everybody knows what it means emotionally. Ethan wants romantic progress. Teegan is offering controlled access. She is not fully cutting him off, but she is not letting him back in as a partner either. And I actually think that is a smart position for her, because Teegan is not just protecting her feelings. She is protecting her life. She has a child. She has a family watching this situation. She has already experienced enough of Ethan's uncertainty to know that rushing back in could create emotional chaos all over again. So when she moves slowly, that is not automatically cruelty. That can be discernment. But there is a fair criticism of Teegan too. If Ethan is truly friend-zoned, then why keep the door open? Why go on the family trip? Why stay close enough for him to believe there may be another chance? Why use language like, what is meant to be will be, if the relationship is basically over? That is where some viewers get frustrated with her, And I understand that frustration, because emotional boundaries are healthy, but emotional limbo can become confusing. If Teegan knows she does not want Ethan back, then keeping him close would be unfair. But if she genuinely does not know yet, then her cautious approach makes sense. The problem is that from the outside, those two things can look almost identical. That is why fans are split. Team Teegan sees a woman protecting herself from a man who only seems to wake up emotionally when he is afraid of losing her. They think she is smart not to melt just because Ethan is finally saying better words. They see her hesitation as self-respect. Team Ethan sees a man who has been through a lot, who is trying to grow, and who cannot seem to get a clear answer. They look at Teegan going on the trip and still leaving the door open, and they wonder whether she is giving him mixed signals, even if she does not mean to. Then there is the third group, the reality TV skeptics. They think this storyline is being stretched by editing. They see the Montana trip, the awkward conversations, the family comments, and the "are they friends or something more?" tension as a production-friendly way to keep Ethan's post-divorce love life dramatic. And honestly, that group is not completely wrong either. Reality TV does not just show events. It arranges them. It chooses the order, the reaction shots, the awkward pauses, the confessionals, and the emotional framing. The feelings may be real, but the presentation is always shaped. That is the whole machine. We all know it, and yet here we are watching anyway, because apparently emotional confusion becomes more enjoyable when edited into 42 minutes with commercial breaks. But even if the edit is shaped, the core issue still feels real. Ethan wants reassurance. Teegan wants proof. That is the central conflict. And the reason this storyline works is because so many people have seen this exact dynamic in real life. Someone comes back after hurting you, and suddenly they are more open, more apologetic, more emotionally available. They say the things you wanted to hear months ago. They make the gestures you used to beg for. They act like the better version of themselves finally arrived. But by the time that version shows up, you are not standing in the same emotional place anymore. You are not waiting with open arms. You are evaluating risk. That is Teegan's energy. She may still care. She may still feel something. She may still wonder whether Ethan could be different. But caring does not mean she owes him access. Feelings do not cancel out caution. And this is where her family's role becomes important. Teegan's family seems kind but guarded. They offered Ethan food at Christmas because they did not want him to be alone. That matters. It shows they are not trying to humiliate him or ice him out completely. But they also kept boundaries. They did not fully welcome him back into the home like everything was normal. That is exactly what you would expect from a family that watched someone they love get hurt. And when there is a child involved, those boundaries matter even more. This is not just a young couple trying to figure out whether they still have chemistry. Teegan has a life outside of Ethan. She has responsibilities. She has people around her who are likely asking whether Ethan can be stable enough to re-enter that world without bringing confusion with him. That raises the stakes. Ethan is not just proving himself to Teegan. He is proving himself to the people who saw what happened when things did not work the first time. And that is a much harder audience, because family does not just listen to your apology. Family watches whether the person they love becomes peaceful or anxious around you. Family notices if the same cycle starts again. Family remembers what the hurt looked like after the cameras were gone. So if Ethan wants back in, he cannot just be emotional. He has to be steady. And steadiness is the word Ethan needs to understand. Not intensity, not speeches, not romantic symbols. Steadiness. The real repair would look boring. It would look like Ethan communicating clearly without being forced into it. It would look like him following through on plans without needing praise. It would look like him respecting Teegan's pace without acting wounded every time she does not give him reassurance. It would look like him accepting that trust does not rebuild at the speed of the person asking for forgiveness. That is the part people forget. The person who wants forgiveness is usually ready to move faster, because they have already decided they are sorry. But the person who was hurt is still deciding whether the apology has enough evidence behind it. Those are two different timelines. Ethan's timeline says, "I am here now. I am trying now. Can we move forward?" Teegan's timeline says, "I need to see whether this version of you lasts." That mismatch is the whole relationship right now. And if Ethan gets frustrated with that mismatch, He will probably prove Teegan's concerns right, because if his effort only lasts when she responds warmly, then it was never true consistency. It was conditional effort. That is what Teegan is testing. Can Ethan keep showing up when he does not get the immediate emotional reward? Can he stay calm when she is cautious? Can he accept that the friend zone is not punishment, but a boundary? Can he become reliable without turning the process into a performance? Those questions matter more than any romantic moment from the trip. Now, there is one uncomfortable thing we have to say. Ethan may want Teegan back not only because he loves her, but because getting her back would prove something to him about himself. That does not mean his feelings are fake. It means the stakes may be bigger in his own mind than just the relationship. After the divorce from Olivia, after the emotional struggles, after the sense that he failed in one marriage, Teegan may represent a chance to show that he can do it differently, that he can be better, that he can love someone without repeating the same mistakes. That is human. But it can also put pressure on Teegan that she did not ask for. Because if her forgiveness becomes the proof Ethan needs that he has changed, then she is no longer just a person with her own boundaries. She becomes a scoreboard for his growth. And that is not fair. Teegan cannot be responsible for making Ethan feel redeemed. Ethan has to become different, whether Teegan takes him back or not. That is the real test of growth. If he only improves because he thinks improvement will win her back, then the change still depends on the reward. But if he improves because he knows the old pattern hurt people and he does not want to keep living that way, then the growth is real, regardless of whether Teegan chooses him. That is the difference between winning someone back and becoming someone better. And that may be the most important point in this entire storyline, because Ethan's future with Teegan may or may not work out, but his pattern will follow him either way if he does not deal with it. If it is not Teegan, it will be the next relationship. The same shutdown, the same delayed urgency, the same emotional clarity arriving after the other person has already run out of patience. That is why this is bigger than one woman or one trip. Ethan is being asked to grow up emotionally in real time, and Teegan is being asked to decide whether she wants to be there while he learns. That is a difficult position for both of them. So where does this go next? My prediction is that Teegan keeps Ethan at a distance longer than he expects. I do not think she is going to be won over by one trip, one confession, or one period of visible effort. She may stay open, but she is going to keep watching. And the more Ethan tries to rush clarity, the more she may pull back. I also think Ethan is going to struggle with the slow pace. He wants to know where he stands. That is understandable. But trust repair does not always give you a progress report. Sometimes, the only proof that things are improving is that the other person stops bracing for disappointment. That takes time. If Ethan can handle that, this could become a slow rebuild. Friendship might actually be the safest place for them to start, because it removes some of the pressure. It gives Teegan room to observe Ethan without immediately risking her heart again. It gives Ethan a chance to show consistency without expecting romantic access as a reward. But if Ethan slips back into old habits, the door will close. And I do not think Teegan will close it loudly. I think she will simply stop leaving it open. That is usually what happens when someone has already spent too much time explaining the same hurt. They do not always give one dramatic goodbye. They just stop offering chances. They stop making space. They stop waiting for the version of the person that only appears when the relationship is in danger. That is what Ethan has to avoid. Not by begging, not by making bigger gestures, not by trying to create another emotional scene. By becoming consistent when nothing dramatic is happening. That is the assignment. And based on Montana, I think Ethan has started the assignment, but he has not passed it. Not yet. He has shown regret. He has shown emotion. He has shown that he wants Teegan back. But Teegan is looking for something more durable than regret. She wants to know whether the man standing in front of her now is actually different, or whether this is just Ethan in panic mode because the relationship is slipping out of reach. That is why her caution matters. She is not blocking love. She is blocking a shortcut. And that might be the healthiest thing she can do. Because if Ethan really has changed, he will not need Teegan to erase the past quickly. He will understand why she needs time. He will respect the boundary. He will prove the difference through behavior, not pressure. But if he has not changed, then her caution will reveal that too. That is the power of a boundary. It does not just protect you. It exposes what the other person is really offering. If Ethan's effort fades because Teegan does not reward it fast enough, then Teegan has her answer. If Ethan stays steady, even without guarantees, then maybe he becomes someone worth reconsidering. That is where the story stands. Ethan wants forgiveness. Teegan wants evidence. And until those two things meet in the middle, this relationship is going to stay in that painful in-between space. Not together, not over, just unresolved. So now, I want to know what you think. Is Teegan right to keep Ethan in the friend zone until he proves real consistency over time? Or is she giving him mixed signals by staying close enough to keep hope alive while still keeping him at a distance? Drop your honest take in the comments, because this is not just a simple Team Ethan or Team Teegan situation. This is about whether effort means anything if it only shows up after the damage is already done. And if this breakdown made you see the Montana trip differently, share it with another Welcome to Plathville viewer, because this storyline is way bigger than one awkward vacation photo. I'll see you in the next one.